Yo, what's up, everybody? How you doing? This is Renz, Coach Renz. Huh. We're going to continue to keep going live Mondays or Tuesdays. Around this time frame, we're going to keep with this idea of reading this Bible in respect of what is wrong with it. Since I've been told multiple times that I need to read it. So we're going to keep reading it. Look at some of the things that are jacked up or misinterpretations or criticisms, contradictions. And giving a few minutes for people to get online. We got multiple cameras and multiple streams. If you find me for the first time, my preference is always my YouTube channel, which is YouTube and my name, larenzoreid, Larenzo. But we're also on Facebook, Coach Renz. Facebook is right here. TikTok is right there. YouTube is right here. And we will jump into this subject really soon here because my children will be here tonight for dinner. I'm going to have a good time. So, if you didn't see the previous live, you can find that one either on my Facebook page, Why I Left Religion, Coach Renz, or you can find it preferably on my YouTube page of Larenzo Reid or Why I Left Religion with Coach Renz on YouTube. If you're over on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like, and share on each one of them. I see Papa Soul's there. I see, is that Mr. Martin? Is that Paul Martin? What's up, dude? Paul Martin's over there. Seeing some people joining. Shout out where you at when you join. I want to see what the people, what area we're looking at. Papa, you burning you one too. A Kentucky Fire Cured. That's a nice one. That's a nice one. This is the H. Upman Anejo. So let's go again. North Carolina. I see that. I'll try to catch everybody. Why is it nice? Okay. That's the way you are. So, of course, as I do these, I'm sure that people might have questions. They may have statements. We try to stay on topic. We try not to go too far off the topic on certain questions because this video can last an hour. We want to keep it under an hour. That way, I have time to do the other stuff that I need to do. So, and like I said, if you haven't seen some of the older ones, I've done Genesis 1 through 31 on my YouTube channel. You will find Genesis 1 through 31. If you want to go back and look at all of them. Brian from Philadelphia. Oh, Paul, you in London? Cool, bro. We were just talking about London the other day. You're hanging around Piccadilly Circus, Paul. Stay off around Piccadilly Circus. But Paul get what I mean. So we're going to go ahead. And as a short recap, we just finished Genesis 31, where we talk about, Genesis 31 is mainly, hey, Dee, I know you're in Fort Lauderdale, where we got Jacob and he left Laban and he took his two wives that he had to work 7 years for each, and he got tricked, and then he complained about his dad, his stepfather, messing around. And then, messing around with his wages and how he left Laban. And then he had his two concubine wives, his two slave wives, Bilhah. And Bilhah was going to play another role in Genesis 33 or 34. Bilhah plays another role in that one where she's mentioned. There's a reason, anytime a woman's name is mentioned, it's because something important happened. But no, see, this is 32. Dana plays a role in 33. Bilhah, I think, is in 34. But anyway, Jacob left. He left, and they made a deal. And we talked a lot about how they had different gods and there was respect of different gods with the god of Nahor, who is Abraham's brother, and how that was respected in the pact that he made with Laban, about how Rachel told this big old lie about the fact that she was on her period, and which demonstrates how multiple cultures of that day had this idea of not touching a woman while she's on her cycle. And this is something that goes through multiple cultures. But as I was always taught as a kid, this was only something that, was in the Christian Judaic culture. It wasn't something that was in other cultures, but evidently it was respected by the Sumerian culture. And we talked about the Sumerian gods that Laban and Nahor would have worshipped, and the fact that Rachel had stole his gods. Now, before we go and get into 32, there's a concept that I was contemplating while I was on my way home to get ready for this. And that is the fact, I've always had this problem, this issue. Like, why was Esau, who was the brother who did very well, and I know I'm going to talk about this again next week when we do chapter 33, because that's when Jacob and Esau are going to meet up again. Esau is always vilified. He's the one who stayed with his parents and took care of them. He's the one who was tricked by Jacob out of his birthright and out of his inheritance. So why is there this connection with Jacob? Jacob is this lying, conniving, cheating guy. And when we get into later chapters, we're going to see that his children are the same way, even though I kind of respect one of the times that they lie. But they're all these lying people. And why was Esau so vilified? And then I came to realize something today, revelation today. And that revelation was this. And we see this become a persistent thing throughout the middle centuries, on up until not too long ago, maybe 120 years ago, right? And actually, we still see this with like the British Royal Crown. I honestly believe that the reason why the 12 tribes of Israel came through the line of Jacob instead of the line of Esau is because they want to preserve the incestuous bloodline. Why do we say he was tricked? Because he was tricked. If you look at chapter 30 or 29, Laban told Jacob, oh yeah, you worked for me for 7 years, you can have my daughter Rachel. And then he snuck in Leah because he knew that nobody would want the lazy-eyed girl. And so he tricked him into marrying Leah. So he was tricked. But when we look at bloodlines, so Esau's the older brother. Esau, out there hunting, well, we know Esau married women who were from the Canaanites and from the Jebusites, I believe. And the Perizzites. And that's why Rebecca, who already said that Jacob was her favorite, made him go and marry a kinsfolk, marry his cousin. And then we get the 12 tribes out of that marriage of his cousins, both his cousins, and the slave wives of his cousins. Right? Esau married a Hittite woman that God didn't like. He married multiple women. He didn't marry just one. He had multiple wives. You have to look at all wives. But they said that God hates him. But look at the bloodline here. Esau married somebody outside of the bloodline of Abraham's family. At first, I used to think that the thing was that when the tribes, when Noah's kids, Japheth, Ham, Shem, their lines, Japheth's and Ham's line, are generally known to have developed polytheistic beliefs. Shem's line is the one that supposedly had monotheistic beliefs, but those monotheistic beliefs of the Shem line didn't come until you get to Abraham, because Shem's great-great-grandson Nahor actually worshiped the Sumerian gods. Abraham comes out of Samaria, so he yes, they got him. I see you, Paul. Abraham was pulled away from Ur by God, supposedly, and due to that, you get Abraham going back to worshiping one God. Rebecca didn't want Jacob marrying somebody else, and Jacob didn't want him, because they were worshiping multiple gods. But even when he went and got Rachel and under her father Laban, who worshipped the gods of Nahor, worshipped the moon god Sin, the god Shemesh, the sun god of the city of Earth, and Elnana, the fertility god, right? And Sin is also called Nana in the Sumerian. So they worshipped different gods. So it wasn't the keeping of the worship of a one God that Jacob went and got a wife from a cousin wife, or got a wife from the land of their fathers. It was all about keeping a bloodline. So Esau is not, who didn't do anything to nobody, took care of his parents. And next week when we get into chapter 33, forgave his brother of all the bullshittery that his brother did, right? And in doing so, because this is on multiple platforms, I don't allow people to come in from a different platform, and that turns into a whole debate thing. This is not about debates, right? Esau married outside the bloodline, and I realized that today, that is the whole big ass deal when it comes to why Jacob becomes the father of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's about bloodlines. And when we look at especially royal families and even lesser families throughout history, we see that they try to keep these things in their bloodline. That this incestuous type of marriage of keeping a bloodline was a big deal to all these people. And that's why Jacob is prominent here. That's why we're going to get another chapter about Esau. But Esau's not mentioned that much. And the only other time Esau is really mentioned is when we go through his genealogy and his, who birthed who thereafter. And that's why I'm saying God hated Esau, because Esau didn't keep the bloodline. Both of them married people who were polytheistic. So it wasn't about the worship of God. It was about keeping that bloodline. So now we're in chapter 32 of Genesis. And we're going to go ahead and get started with this portion of it. So Jacob went on his way. This is after he's left Laban. Him and Laban has made this pact. And they swore the pact and said that the God of his father Abraham and Isaac will always be watching. But they also said that the God of Nahor would always be watching as well. So they respected both gods, both versions of religiosity in this sense. So Jacob is leaving Laban from making this deal at Gilead. And it says Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named the place Mahanaim. And Jacob does this, like, oh, I met somebody here, so I'm going to rename this place as this place didn't have a name. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brothers Esau to the land of Seir in the country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep, goats, male, female, servants. Now I am sending this message to my lord that I might find favor in your eyes." Now, according to the previous chapters, why is Jacob calling Esau Lord, my lord Esau? It's lower cases, but he sent them ahead because Jacob was afraid. He's scared. He's scared because he knows that he has done his brother wrong, right? So in knowing that he's done people wrong, he's afraid of him. So in that fear, he sends somebody ahead, which is pretty smart. It's a pretty smart idea. Let me send somebody ahead of you because, oh, thank you, Errol. I appreciate that. Errol on YouTube donated to the channel. So I a little something for the collection plate. That's hey, it helps keep the videos going. I'll tell you that. So he's afraid. So he sends the messengers ahead because he's afraid of his brother, because he knows he stole his brother's birthright. He stole his brother's inheritance by impersonating him and by cheating him over a bowl of soup when the man was hungry. Right. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, we went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you with 400 men with him. Now, in no time frame, 400 people is a damn army. That's an army of people to come meet him. And then it says, in great fear and distress, Jacob divided his people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and the herds and the camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that is left may escape. So Esau is expecting his brother to attack him because Esau is still concerned about the bullshit that he did to his brother in stealing his birthright over a bowl of soup and stealing his inheritance. So he's afraid. Now, this is the thing that I tell, like, if you're believing in this, why are you afraid? Your God in the previous chapter said that go back to your homeland and I will be with you. So people they look at these people as if they were great people of faith, but evidently they're not. They're not. So, because he's scared of what his brother's going to do. Then Jacob prayed, "Oh God of mine," and this is probably the smartest prayer. And this is also, if you read Genesis, this is the first. In every other account of Genesis, when there is a prayer, there's either a prayer to a rock, or there's an angel, or God, or any of those there. And there's something towards the middle of this that is going to be a contradictory thing about the Bible in itself. But it said that he prayed, "Oh God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper." And he told him, go back to your country, go back to your relatives. But we're going to see later on that he's going to ignore the shit out of that. Right? So when people say you got to follow God's will to prosper, evidently Jacob is going to show us that you don't have to follow your God's will in order to prosper. As we see in our daily lives, that people who don't even believe in this version of God prosper without ever following their God. Oh man, Arrow, you from Pittsburgh? I don't like you today, man. Y'all beat us in football yesterday. But he said, "I am unworthy of all your kindness, faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid, I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers of mothers with their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendant like the sands of the sea, which cannot be counted." Here again, if you was with us in the earlier Genesis one, this is a repetitive thing that this God does. He makes this promise of, I'm going to give you all this land, I'm going to give you all this, your descendants are going to be huge, and you're going to have all this, right? You're going to have all this. But all of this stuff has never happened. To this day, this promise of Abraham has never happened, which makes this whole religion BS. But on Facebook, YouTube, I don't know, this is Facebook, I think. What religion do you take if you choose? I choose no religion. None of them. I pull out different wisdoms from each one of them that correlate with the wisdom of the universe, the understanding of how the universe works, the hermetic laws. If they correlate with that, yes. All of this stuff is just stories, metaphors, just propaganda to uplift one group over another group. So I don't believe in a deity that is so small that it's encapsulated in one book, in one group. One religion knows the answer, has all the answers. No one actually will have all the answers. So I extrapolate as much as I possibly can and meditate on it and follow logical courses of order and go through critical thinking of all of it, right? And then, of course, people have their ideas. Like my man up here on TikTok, dude is deceived and cannot lead himself, much less others. God is watching. I'm gonna do a video, and you're gonna talk about it right now, of how these religious people look when they say stuff like that. Because my way is the only way. And we show sad they find out that the Islamic people are right. So he said he spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brothers. Brother Esau: 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants. Each herd by itself, and said to the servants, "Go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds." This is a strategic move to make sure he kind of pacifies his brother before he sees him, to try to make him be nice to him. He instructed the one in the lead: "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, who do you belong to, and where are you going, and who owns all these animals in front of you, then you are to say that they belong to your servant Jacob." And Jacob's calling himself a servant again. "They are the gift to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind. They are the gift to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us." He also instructed the second and the third and the others to follow his hand, and you are to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And be sure to say, your servant Joseph is coming behind us. For he thought, I will pacify him with these gifts I am sending on ahead. Later, when I see him, perhaps he will receive me. And we're going to see how Esau is a better man than Jacob. We're going to see his background. I do know some things about Islam, not a whole lot. We're going to see how Esau is a much better man than Jacob, but yet, like I said in the beginning of this, it is all about keeping that incestuous bloodline, right? And Jacob's gifts we see, perhaps he will receive me. And Jacob's gifts went on ahead for him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. Now we're going to get into a very interesting part here. Yes, DD, this is very idiotic stuff. Yeah, and my guy, that's what I know. Even if I don't like cake, I can still teach you to bake one. Exactly. I don't like seafood, but because I know how to cook, I can still teach you how to cook it. Here's the thing. Most of y'all know, some of the people have been with me for a while, they know I own a popcorn shop. I don't really eat popcorn, but I know how to make it. I know how to make all 26 different flavors. So that night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants. And these 2 female servants are his slave wives. And understanding the way that the Bible and the way those people were at that time frame, you have to understand when he said my 2 female servants, these are not servants in the sense of 7 years of Jubilee, they will be free. These are servants in the sense that these are slave wives, sex slave wives. They will be his sex slave wives until he or they die, right? They will share in the inheritance that their sons get when he dies, if they outlive him. So these are not servants, these are slave wives. The word in there in the Hebrew is ibed. And if you saw the video I did a couple of days ago, I explained how ibed equals slave. It doesn't equal servant. That is a gross mistranslation into English because it went from the ibed, and then they translated from the Slavic word slave to slave that we have in English. It's S-L-A-V in Slavic, it's S-L-A-V-E in English. But then in the 18th, 19th century, that because slavery had ended, 19th century, 20th century, slavery had ended. So Bible translations start changing the word from slave to servant to pacify people who now do not follow, who think slavery is an abhorrent institution. I'm glad for you. I've been on my own since I was 12. Grandmother died. I'm glad for you too. There is a verse in the Quran called Mary, Mother of Jesus. Yes, I do know that Islamic people do believe in Jesus. And this is an interesting thing. They believe in Jesus not as the Son of God, but he's a great prophet, and Jesus will return, and he will come back, and he'll teach for 7 years, because Jesus, the first time he was here, he taught in the cradle, but then he's going to teach into the adulthood, which will make Jesus around 40. So he's teaching into the adulthood. And in Islam, that means that he's going to practice Islam as well. So for my gentleman up there who said, talking about God is watching, understand how you're going to feel if Jesus comes back and he goes and he practices Islam, and then you're sitting up there practicing Christianity, and you had all these biases against Christians, biases against everybody else. But that's how Christians look when they sit here and they try to say that everybody else is going to hell. You're wrong. You're a blasphemer. You're this. You're that. You're a deceiver. You've been deceived. All these different things. So imagine if that happened. And Jesus comes back and he's practicing with Islamic people. You're going to say, what about me? I've been faithful to you. I've been diligent. I've been trying to follow your commandments. I've been, asking for your forgiveness, praying to you. I believed in you. And how dare you follow Islam? You'll probably say that that's a false teacher, is what you'll probably say. But it's going to be interesting if there is a judgment and all, like everybody standing up there in heaven at the gates, and then you see an Islamic person next to a Buddhist person, next to a Hindu person, next to a Christian person, next to an atheist person, next to everybody else. And everybody walks in. Mm-hmm. Esau despised his birthright. Esau was hungry. And I wouldn't take that seriously. But it's all about that bloodline. So it's a propaganda to make Esau look bad. That's why even in this story, Esau is going to look like the good guy because he is a good guy. Right? That night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants and his 11 sons and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. Now, here's something. Did Jacob forget that he has a daughter? You see, once again, women, when I did a video saying that God hates women in this book, people got all up in their panties about it. All in their feelings. And the biggest people who got into their feelings were women. This book consistently shows you in bits and pieces, and sometimes very direct, that it does not respect women at all. Jacob has 11 sons. He has 1 daughter. But yet she's not worthy of being mentioned here. Did the 11 sons and the wives go across and he left the daughter with some other people? Where is there mention of Dana in this portion? Did she not cross the ford? But no, she's not important right now. But next week in the next chapter, we're going to see why she's important, why she's named, because then she becomes important. But all throughout this book, women are never named unless there's something important about them. Whereas it can just name dudes who ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Religion will have and always be insane. Yes, it will. That PC was good. That PC was good too. I remember I won a sample pack from you. Oh, popcorn. Oh, you won one of the sample packs? Yep, that sample pack was good. Everything I make is good. Do a video on the King of Salem, priest of the Most High, and Melchizedek. I think I did one of those some years ago, but I'm learning that I'm revisiting videos. But it's good to revisit because when I revisit, I go back and I'll spend like 45 minutes, an hour or so to study it before I make it, and then I always learn something new. I love learning, so I'm learning something new every time. So I'll research that again. Right, Dana is her name. Yeah, but we're not going to talk about Dana in depth until next week because there's some bullshittery that goes on with Dana. Even though I do respect one part. I think the brothers are pretty damn smart in one thing they did. So ain't nobody worried about Dana crossing the river, just the slave wife, 2 slave wives, the 2 other wives that he had to work for, and the 11 sons. All right, after he had sent them across the stream, he sent over his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. I ain't gonna lie, when I was younger, this part I thought was gay as hell. I thought it was invoking homosexuality personally. When I was younger, I just wanted to throw that out there. That he wrestled with him till daybreak, because who has the strength to wrestle from dusk till daybreak? Like, I've been in many fights. After about 10 minutes, I'm tired as hell. I got in the last fight I got into, I literally vomited after the fight because of all how strenuous it was, to fight. And that fight only lasted about 5 minutes. When I was in combat in the best shape of my life, there's absolutely no way you could fight like that all night. So in my young mind, in my 20s and late 20s, I was like, the only thing that you do all night is get some. Right. So in my youth, I thought this was a very homosexual statement. Right. Come to learn a little bit more about it as I got older. No, hell is not real. Hell is really in your mind. Hell is a condition, a state of being. It's not a place. But you can manifest that place if you choose to. P.A. Tick said that on Facebook. But you only manifest it if you choose to. There's nothing that exists that I don't manifest that exists. All right, so he wrestled until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that the hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Yes. So what's crazy about this part here? Let me finish it first. Let me get it down to 28. He said, the man asked him, "What is your name?" Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Right. And Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed him there. And what is this blessing? He blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, oh, we ain't going to see Esau in this one. We're going to see Esau next week. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God's face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him, and he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. From where do you read that story? Which I don't know which story you're talking about. If you're talking about this one, this is the Bible. The thing I was talking about Jesus coming back and teaching for 7 years, 7 more years into adulthood, that is from Islamic doctrine that I learned when I was in Mecca. So Jacob wrestled with God and won. He said, touched, it was broken. That's just what it says here. Now, the thing about it says that he wrestled with this man all night till daybreak. And then he said, "Let me go unless you bless me." And I think you can understand why as a youth I thought that this was kind of gay. And he asked the man, "What is your name?" And Jacob answered, and he touched him in the hips of the socket. Now, in some Hebrew translations, the word there actually means penis. So some Hebrew translations, penis. Other Hebrew translations, to which those Hebrew translations that mean the socket of his hip, those are the ones that made it into the Septuagint and so on and so forth. And so that's why in today's format of the Torah, it is the socket of his hip. And all this story is to talk about why there's a piece of meat that Hebrew people don't eat, right? But he hit him in the socket or the penis, one of the two. So he touched his penis. Now, I would normally find this weird as hell, but we have to remember, we go back to when Isaac, I think it was Isaac, no, it was Abraham, was making a pact with a man. He told him to put his hand under his thigh. So they got some, hands on the thighs, touching in some interesting places is not uncommon for these people. So being touched in the socket or right there. Now, and if you understand the socket, that's right there. That if it ain't touching the penis directly, you are still right there in that area, that little groove between your ping, the balls, and your hip. So he all, we up in there, okay? We touching all up in there. Paul Martin said bags of foreskins. Yeah, I can't wait to get that part of Genesis. Those parts about David. And actually gonna get into that a little bit when we talk about Dana. But he's touching all up in the peen area, right? And they named it pineal. Now I know a lot of people today, they look at it and say pineal, representing the pineal gland. We call it the pineal gland. This is where DMT comes from. This is where your dreams come from. This is where your visions come from. So some people say that, I've had preachers try to tell me that Jacob didn't physically wrestle with God, that it was a mental vision of him wrestling with God, but yet he's limping the next day. So that is a literal thing that's happening. And that's why the Hebrew people take it literally and they don't eat that portion of meat, that little tendon of meat right there. So it is not he wasn't in a hypnotic state or a mushroom state or something like that. According to this story, they were physically wrestling. So how can a man physically wrestle with God and win? How strong is this God? The Bible, we do know, is clearly wrong. Yes, it is very wrong. And I don't Hitchem. I'm gonna mess up your first name if I try to say it. It looked like Jahelel. If I'm saying it wrong, my apologies. Right. So this man won. God tuckered out. Right. And people believe this. How can God lose to a mortal? It makes no sense. You cannot lose to it. If you're the omnipresent, all-powerful God, you don't lose to a mortal. You can't lose to a mortal. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Because then you're not God. Because then mortal man can beat you. How can you be beaten by mortal man? Right? And then he changed his name, said, now your name gonna be Israel. Now, if you on my Smoking Phoenix channel, almost a year ago, you heard it was this video and where I got mad at this dude because my cigar lounge is called Smoking Phoenix, and he decided he gonna keep calling me Phoenix, and I told him my name is Renz, but he decided he gonna keep calling me Phoenix because ain't no man gonna name me. No man is going to name me, right? But he changed his name to Israel, right? But the Bible writers completely forgot about this immediately after. Because immediately after he said that because you wrestle with God and with God and with humans and have overcome, right after that, Jacob said, should not that next line say Israel said? Right? Eric said Jesus could get tired. Exactly. Jesus got tired. He needed to, they'll say that Jesus got tired because he was God in the form of flesh of man. So he had these same issues of man of needing to eat and all that kind of stuff. But if you was here when I was doing, if you go back and look at the other Genesis versions of this same type video, all these angels, when they met with Abraham, he brought them in and they ate. They had to eat and they rested, right? So all these so-called spiritual beings seem to need to eat and seem to need rest. So maybe that lady who sang that song Ironic is right. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us, right? What did he say? I can't get beyond the Bible's God being a dusty. How you let your son get murdered by some BS you created? Exactly. The Bible is a copy of another book that changed some words. The Bible is a copy of a copy of a bunch of copies. And then man, you're making me, I don't want to do that because there's a whole nother video I want to do, a short video about faith. So I'm gonna leave that one alone. But then he said he named it pineal because he saw the face of God and survived. I can't tell you in my head right now exactly where it says it in like the New Testament as well as in the Old Testament, but it talks about the fact that no one has ever seen the face of God. Pastors like to talk about how Moses had to turn his back and just that passing his back was so glorious, because if he saw God's face, in fact, that is in about the story of Moses, where if you see the face of God, then you will die. But yet, not only did Jacob see his face, but he wrestled and he won, right? So where is it that it's, so why do we have this contradiction? If this God is so perfect, so all powerful, and then why is the message so contradictory? Why is the teaching so contradictory? If God is perfect, then his message would be perfect, but yet we see the message is far, far from perfect. Because right here in the message, we see that Jacob says he saw the face of God. And that's, you can't explain that away. You can't explain away that he said he saw the face of God here, but yet in other portions of your book, it says that he did not see the face, that no man has seen the face of God and lived. And I said the difference, understanding God, the difference between God the Father and God the Son, which is polytheistic. In my viewpoint of God, of what God is. You see, God can never be taken away from, can never be separate from itself. You know, if God is a full cup of coffee and I pour some of this into another vessel, and I know there's this water thing, right? Let me hit this real quick. There's this water thing that I saw this Christian person say, that if you had the whole ocean, and the whole ocean represented God as a spirit, if you take a bottle and you dip some of that ocean water out and it's in the bottle, then is not the bottle, the water in the bottle still God? It's still the ocean. Sure, that works in the matter plane of existence. When we're talking about matter stuff, material things, it's still the ocean. The only problem is when you put it in the bottle, it's separate from the ocean. It doesn't have it doesn't move. It doesn't have it's not part of the current. It's not part of the ocean anymore. So technically, no, it's not the ocean, because if it was still the ocean, then you would have to say the rain that's going on outside is the ocean. The rivers is the ocean. The lakes is the ocean. That all water on earth is the ocean, but it's clearly not. There's fresh water, salt water. There's different minerals. There's differences within all that water. Certain life can live in the ocean that cannot live in the stream or lake. So that is why this version of God that can pour himself into the body of a human body cannot be God. This being that said, my father, why has that forsaken me? And in different versions of the Bible, he says different things on the cross. Like, why have thou forsaken me? Okay, how can you forsake yourself? How can you ever be without yourself? An infinite God can never not be its full and complete self. So for it to be poured into the human body of flesh, it is not God, right? It's not. And Paul's saying water is only part of the ocean. Well, why can't the ocean be part of the lake instead of it being part of the ocean? Who says that it's the ocean? Man does, because man creates God. Man created the name ocean. Man named the ocean. Man decided, what the lakes are and named the lakes, and decided what's a lake and what's a pond, what's a stream and what's a river, what's a creek. Man decides all these things. And in the same way, man has decided what God is. And that's what this book is doing. That's what all these religions do. They decide what God is, not God. If you really think about it. Somebody asked a question earlier about Adam and Eve. Let's see if I can find it so I can make sure I say it right. And yeah, and this whole story, they needed all this just to talk about, it won't scroll. Oh, there it is. They needed all of this to talk about why they shouldn't eat a piece of meat out the hip joint. Women are an afterthought. God created Adam only to create Eve because Adam was lonely. Oh, that was when I was talking about that. Yeah. How did he know that man? I mean, this is like Genesis, and we covered this in the first one I did with Genesis chapter 1 and 2. It says on the sixth day he created male and female and told them to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Then in chapter 2, he made Adam after he saw that there was nobody on the land because he hadn't made rain, which sounded like a mistake. You think God would understand how nature works? But here he is having to make Eve. And if you go into the Kabbalic, he made Lilith first and then he made Eve, right? But these women are afterthoughts. Should he have not made Eve in the beginning with Adam at the same time, given Eve the same instruction that he gave Adam, instead of allowing Adam to tell her what it is? I mean, it's kind of like, so my children are coming over here today. Only two of them, actually. The oldest is 27. The oldest is 27. She's coming. My youngest, my son, he's 21. Is the message stronger if I tell both my children and they get it from me, or if I tell Sydney and then I rely on Sydney to tell Lincoln? The message could get diluted. The importance, the authority is not there, right? So if the authority is not there, the message is not taken in as deep. And I've seen this with my kids when I've done this, where I've told one and then tell them to tell the others. The impetus is not there. The emphasis is not there. So it makes more sense that he would have had Adam and Eve at the same time, created at the same time, and then tell both of them, so that both receive the same authority, instead of it being diluted by having it secondarily told by somebody else. And that's how all these writings are. Understand, and I'm going to talk about this in a whole other video about faith. People are having faith in a doctrine that comes from multiple differences in opinion of the doctrine, that then come from multiple variations of the doctrine that was voted on to be the doctrine, that came from multiple inscriptions and different scrolls and even pieces of scrolls that comes from different cultures from different times, and they have faith that that's right. They have a faith that that's right. But Jacob supposedly wrestled God and named the place Peniel because he saw the face of God and his life was spared. And he was physically limping, which would indicate that this was a physical thing that literally happened. It's a literal thing. Greetings. So let's see how much time I got left. No, I don't have enough time to go into the next chapter. When I study these, I'll read multiple chapters and then go off and study some other stuff that correlates with them. So, but I don't have enough time to go through another chapter. Why was the God of the Bible wrestling one dude while everything else was going on? Well, because this is propaganda, Brandon. This is all propaganda for the Hebrew people to uplift themselves and show that they are the chosen people of God, because the focus of God was put on them. You know, it's kind of like if you have a parent who has 5 kids, but they focus on one child's development, one child's growth, then that's the chosen child. That's the child that should be listened to, should be followed, that you should do what that child does. So this is all propaganda. So this is why you get that way he's going to wrestle with just this one dude. Never mind that at this very same time, you got people in Mesoamerica who are doing human sacrifices. You got people in all over the world doing human sacrifices. You got rape going on all over the world. You got rape going on in their culture. You got murder going on all over the world. You got civilizations that were already in existence that was well built up all over the world during this exact same time. But yet he can only focus on this one dude in this one space. Now, if you say God is omnipresent, then you have to admit that maybe God's way of teaching the Mesoamericans was through Quetzalcoatl and the feather serpent and all of those. Maybe he was, I slipped up and hit my elbow today. Maybe he was down in West Africa, Central Africa, teaching about Ogun and Oromare. He was in the Indus Valley as Brahma and Krishna. And if you understand Brahma and Krishna, Brahman is supreme deity, just like Oromare is the supreme deity. All other facets, all of the what seems like deities are merely aspects of the supreme deity. So Krishna, which is comparable to Jesus, is an aspect, a son of, a redeemer of the people of Brahma, right? Anansi is the creative, trickster, wisdom portion of Ormari, you know. Ogun, I think Ogun's a woman, you know. Oshun is a woman. She's representing that fertility in that water. She's the fertility and water of Ormari, you know. Ra is the physical embodiment of the Ogdo. And man, many people who study Kemetic don't really go beyond Amun Ra to realize that Amun Ra, who was birthed from the cosmic egg as the physical embodiment of the Ogdo, a 4-part entity, energy that is broken up within each 4 part in the feminine and the masculine, is a representation of the supreme consciousness, the supreme deity, so to speak. All other religions had that, but like I did in the video about voodoo, Christianity went around demonizing any and all other religions during colonization. And this was done to conquering the people of that religion. Jesus is the way to being a damn fool. That's funny. So that's pretty much how this chapter goes. We see Jacob is already planning and scamming of how he's going to cheat his brother again, how he's going to fade his brother and swerve his brother, right? Trying to send him some gifts, you know, and separate people, and forgetting that he has a daughter and has his 2 wives and his 2 slave wives, and you know, because he's afraid, because he knows he stole the birthright. But as I said in the very beginning, Jacob is only focused on because he's the one that kept the incestuous bloodline. Esau is the better brother, he's the better person. But Esau didn't keep the incestuous bloodline, which when you look at the Spanish court, for instance, you got Charles I think it's Charles V or Charles II. The numbers be throwing me off. But his father is also his grandfather. So this mentality of incest and keeping the bloodline has always been more important. That's why the British Royal Crown got mad that little white boy went and married the little mixed girl, Megan, I think is her name, because she's going outside. He went outside the bloodline. You got to keep that bloodline. You're watching this, not knowing you were live. Oh, yeah, I'm live. So this is why Jacob becomes the important guy, because he's keeping that bloodline, and his mother Rebecca understood that. She knew the assignment. And then when he's going, he's scared of his brother because he stole his birthright. We're going to see next week how his brother, you know, man, I don't need your gifts. You're my brother. I got you. But Jacob going to be Jacob. And we see that he wrestled God and won. There's no way in hell a man can wrestle God and win. A supreme deity. I know we like our movies and stuff, but if an alien race came down here with technology super far superior than ours, it's unlikely we're going to win. It's possible, but very unlikely. And those are beings, flesh and blood. You know, we're talking about God. Come on, man. And then God changed his name, but the Bible writers forgot. They will continue to forget for a while that his name is supposed to be Israel. And he touched him in the ping. I don't care what you say. The socket, look, the socket is right here. I'm telling you right now, if any one of y'all touch me right now, you too close. You touching the goods. So he got touched in the ping ping. Just like Abraham had that man put his hand under his thigh. Telling someone, I'm gonna make a deal. We're making a deal. Put that hand under that thigh. Yeah, nice and warm. Right there under the thigh. Now you got a promise because you're not touching me on the thigh. And all of this to explain why a place is called Peniel. The contradictory of you've seen the face of God, where the Bible consistently says that no man has seen the face of God, but yet Jacob has, according to this book. And that you ain't supposed to eat that piece of meat. Right? And this is one of those things when people say, do you follow the commandments? I'll ask them questions like that. Do you follow the commandments? So the tendon, that nice succulent piece of tendon in the socket of an animal, are you refraining from eating that? Do you make sure you're not eating that piece of meat? Because if you're not keeping it. You're not keeping them rules. And Yeshua, Jesus told you that I take not one tittle from this book. That you're supposed to keep all the commandments. So if I was utilizing this to teach a non-religious message, most of it would be teaching what not to do and what not to be. Right? It's not that Jacob was trying to appeal to his brother and say that, hey, if the message that he sent to his brother was, hey man, I know I stole your birthright. I know that I stole your inheritance. And I know you stayed there with mom and dad. I'm sorry. I'm sending you these gifts as an apology to make up for what I did. If you demonstrated true repentance, that's I would tell you this story is to say what you shouldn't be. You should not be like Jacob, that you just show repentance to whomever you've wronged, right? Anytime somebody wrongs me, I don't just apologize. I try to make up for it. If they lost something because of what I did, it is my responsibility to replace what they lost. Not just to say, I'm sorry. I'm going to replace it because I lost it. It's like insurance. You buy car insurance because if you wreck someone's car, you got the insurance to replace the car, right? You didn't get the insurance just so you can say, I'm sorry, I wrecked your car. Be blessed. No, you replace it. Then in the beginning of it, he gave a prayer to remind God of what he was promised, of what he promised him. I would say that you should take the idea that you have to remind the God and Goddess inside yourself to remind yourself of your connection with universal energies to make sure you manifest whatever it is you've been working on manifesting. I didn't say I know why you left religion. Noah's Ark is BS, right? Noah's Ark is some super BS. And you really go back and look at the Genesis, why I left religion, Genesis, and why I left religion. I mean, what's wrong with the Bible? The Genesis part that covered Noah's Ark. I think those videos are like 2 hours long. But, I would tell you to learn that lesson. And as far as him wrestling with God, wrestling with the God and Goddess inside you. There's no physical being out here that you're going to wrestle with. You're going to wrestle with the God, your ass is going to lose. It's that simple. But you can win against the ones that inside you. When you have those thoughts of doing something that you know is outside of the universal nature, that goes beyond, that is hurtful and harmful to someone else. Like I've always said, I don't care what you do, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of somebody else to do what they want to do. Like you don't rape because you don't want to be raped. You don't steal because you don't want to be stolen from. That the wrestling is all within yourself. And you bless yourself, not somebody else. And don't forget about your daughters. Your daughters are important. I'm gonna take a few minutes and if you got any questions, we'll hit those for about, let's see, it's raining outside. And I normally don't smoke cigars in my house, so then I gotta turn my my big air blasting purifier thing on that's loud as hell to clear out the smell. Why does an all-powerful God love the smell of burning fat? You are a believer, and that's nice. Hold on. But I told them that that's not what the real story is about. Esau and Jacob and Ibrahim all have small brains. Thank you. And it's nice to listen to you. So I'm going to hit all of that. They all do have small brains. We're talking about people who wrote books, and we're talking about stories written by people who didn't understand a lot of things in nature and how they work. So they had to implement a God tier in order to explain why certain things are, because they just were ignorant of certain scientific knowledge and universal knowledge. They, according to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki taught them everything. And according to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki walked with them. Now, if you look at if you go to the Genesis one when I was talking about Abraham, the Anunnaki that Abraham is following is Enlil. During those eras, those times, the Anunnaki walked among people. This is why they see these, what they call angelic beings and gods, and they bow down to them. And this is why these beings need to eat and they need to rest. They like that smell of burning fat because they eat. They need substance to maintain their bodies. So they fill themselves with food. They need to sleep because they need to regenerate their energies. They were deemed to be gods, according to the Sumerians, because they live 2 to 300 years. And let's be real, if a being was still alive today, and your grandfather, grandmother, great ancestors can all say that they knew that same being and it's lived all this time, then you would think that that being is immortal. And then you would think that being is a god because they're not dying. Right? But even in the Noah story, Noah cooks he does a barbecue and God sees, ooh, it smells good. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, where it talks about, I think it's Utnapishtim is the Noah character. When he does the barbecue, that's when Enlil realizes that all the people didn't die, and he's pissed, but he's smelling that barbecue, and he likes that. It's because these are corporal beings. These are matter material beings who live and die. They just live a lot longer. If you follow the hollow earth theory, it is said that the Anunnaki or whomever now live in the center of the earth, well, inside the earth, not the center, but inside the earth. And they have a big old ocean. They have all these technologies. If you look at, Admiral Byrd's information, Admiral Byrd saying that flying saucers took him inside this hollow earth. And he saw all this great technology. And these beings inside the earth live 800 years, right? Now, if these beings are living 800 years and we only are living about 70 to 130, 140 years, 150 years, then we may think them to be immortal. So these people in their ignorance would have thought the same thing. One of the things that I found funny is that they say the devil is out to kill and steal, but who did he kill in the Bible? That's interesting. Who did the devil kill in the Bible? Some people say that he killed Jacob's children, but that would be wrong, because the angel that killed Jacob's children is not the devil. That's the Satan. The Satan is not the devil, so to speak, as how people envision the devil today. Lucifer killed no one. The serpent killed no one. So suffice it to say, the devil has killed not one person in the Bible, because the Satan is the adversary. It's the person who said, okay, God, yeah, you blessing that dude, but the only reason you blessing him is because you give him all this stuff. I mean, hell, who wouldn't keep loving you if you give him all this stuff? Of course they're going to love you. He's playing, as we like to commonly use and say, devil's advocate. You give him all this stuff. Of course he doesn't. All right? Of course he's going to love you. But devil has actually killed no one. Whereas Elohim, El, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever name you want to call him, the Most High, has instructed people to genocide all these people. Killed one dude, I forgot his name. It's a guy, he marries a woman, they don't produce children, but God said he was so wicked that he killed him. And then the brother had to marry him because of cultural reason, married the girl because of cultural reason, because he didn't have a wife and they didn't have children yet. But those children will be the older brother who dies kids. And he was, pulling out and shooting on the floor, and God killed him, right? Right. So they're killing all these. So God is killing all these people. Later on in Genesis, we've already seen it in the earlier Genesis ones, but later on in more Genesis, we're gonna see them, especially when you start getting into Moses. Go kill all the Jebusites and the Amorites and the Hittites and all these other types. Go kill all of them, but keep the young virgin girls as your wives. The one who hadn't known a man, keep them as your wife. So we see all of that. Dennis over here on Facebook. Jesus never existed and was stolen from the Hebrew, and is a metaphor for the son. Adam and Eve were stolen from Assur and Set. Same with Cain and Abel, stolen from Assur and Assur and Seth. Moses never existed, and nothing from his story has ever happened either. Ashe, brother. And you're right to a certain extent. These are stolen stories, but it's more than just Assur and Set and Seth, right? Because the Sumerians had similar stories. It was Adapa and Titi will be your Adam and Eve. Cain and Abel would be your Cain and Abel, right? So they had that similarity in that story as well with different names. So, and you understand that these Hebrew people, when they did begin to write their own propaganda, they knew the Sumerian story and they knew the Kemetic story, and they're meshing them all together. They even knew the Buddhist story and the Hindu story. So there's parts of the Buddhist and Hindu story that's also meshed in there as well, And hell, you can even go as far as say that they added some of the Greek stories with all that. If you look at the Greek stories, Zeus is always banging some mortal woman and them producing a demigod. Krishna is the son of Brahman, the spirit god. And I keep forgetting the female deity that's like the wife that will be the Mary in this situation. But these are themes that you can find in multiple cultures that came before the Christian story or the Jewish story. They say that's an expression of how misogynistic the Bible is. And yeah, it is. It's very misogynistic. I made sure my daughters understood that this is not, you don't want a Bible-loving man. A Bible-loving man is putting in his subconscious some misogynistic stuff. And for you guys who know that I own a cigar lounge, I sit in there, and a lot of those guys, and they my cigar guys, and we have great conversations sometimes. We have great conversations. But I tell them jokers sometimes, y'all some male chauvinists in this joint. And you're male chauvinist because you've grown up in these cultures that promote this male chauvinist, misogynistic mentality. And I have to admit, one guy last night was like, man, I wish I could be as open-minded as you. We was talking about some other stuff about that, but even in all his stuff, he's very misogynistic. And I tell him, so don't think I'm talking behind anybody's back, because I don't do that. If I'm saying this, that dude knows. I've already told him many times, you're a male chauvinist. All right, you're misogynistic. I'm trying to help the brother out. Dionysus has a similar story to Jesus, very much so. Had his 12, died and rose again, all that stuff, healed, brought some people back to life. So you can see this is they're homogenizing a lot of different stories from other cultures, and they're putting it all together to make their own, because everybody wants to feel important. And what you do, and the Romans were the best at this, I think, at backdating things. The Romans were really good at backdating things in high quantity to make it seem like their stuff is ancient. This is why the Romans, they love Greek antiquity, but hated the Greeks, if that makes any sense. They love the antiquity of Greek. They like, if you spoke Greek, you were educated and important. But they love the antiquity of Greece, but they didn't like the Greek people. Right? But they love backdating stuff. The whole story of Vespasian having Josephus write some things that would eventually become part of the Gospels was all about backdating things. Everything Titus done was backdated to seem like it happened like Jesus did it, right? So when you read the Annals of Titus written by Josephus, they look very similar to what happened in the Gospels, because they like to backdate things. And in order to make the Julio-Claudians look bad, he backdated writings to make it seem like Nero was even worse than he was. I mean, he wasn't a good guy, but it made it seem like he was even worse. And they used backdating things in order to do that. And we have to realize all this propaganda stuff that happens, that people utilize to backdate stuff. Women, please talk about Islam stories. I don't know a lot of Islam stories, so you gotta be a little bit more specific. I mean, I know, see, I studied Islam long enough to realize how jacked up some of the stuff is. You know, Abraham marrying a 14-year-old girl. I mean, Muhammad marrying a 14-year-old girl. You know, that kind of thing. Some female circumcisions that they were doing way back in the day. If you were Muslim and you lived amongst Muslims, you can be heavily taxed in order to force you to become Muslim, or chop off your head if you don't want to become Muslim. Forcing kids and forcing the children to become Muslim by threatening the parents, forcing the parents by threatening the kids. The idea of jinn, that you got a good angel on your left shoulder and a bad angel on your right shoulder. I know jinn are not angels, you know, because jinn can be controlled. Demon possessions, and get in and do work for you. So I don't know a lot of the Muslims, but then with how Islam came out of Catholicism, and the fact that Malik so you had, I always get them confused. One was up in Syria, in modern day Syria. The other one was in Judea, and you have Malik and Ibn Sahih. They took Islam and weaponized it for the government in order to begin the conquest of the Arab nations and to create the Arab nation under the banner of Islam. They use religion to kill and murder people and to conquer land. Paul says some similarities happen in debunk, some of them. What does Islam have to do with the Bible? I mean, it's just, Islam is supposed to be the continuation of the Bible, but corrected. You know, when Jesus said that I would send another, that one will be your comforter, but Christian people take that as the Holy Spirit. I don't know where Barnabas disappeared to. Islam is supposed to be that Muhammad was the final high holy prophet of God, Allah, and that they are that's the comforter. That'll be with you, that will teach you into that next level. Christianity is just to get you started. And then Islam is for you to come into your adulthood of learning and full submission to God. So there is that connection. And with Ibn Sahih and Malik seeing how the Catholic Church controlled the people through religion, they adopted Islam in order to control the Arab people, which allowed them to create the Arab nation across North Africa. Then the Moors came behind them and utilized a similar tactic to conquer the Arab nation, plus the Iberian and the Italian peninsula. What does Catholicism have to do with Christianity? A whole lot. Without Catholicism, you have no Christianity. You have no Christianity. Realize that Catholicism only came about from after the Protestant Reformation. You see, Catholicism, they didn't call themselves Catholics when it was really called the Way initially. In the early 1st, 2nd, 3rd century, it was called the Way. Then in 480, Emperor Theodosius, 482 actually, Emperor Theodosius commanded that everyone within the Roman Empire must be Christian. It wasn't called Catholicism at that time frame. It's not until you get the Protestant Reformation and you start having Protestants that then you get the separation of Catholics, those who remain true to Rome, who remain true to the Pope. Then you get Catholicism. But recognize, Martin Luther wasn't trying to create Protestantism, trying to reform Christianity and what the papacy had created as far as selling indulgences and all these sorts of things, and improper doctrinal teachings, and not allowing people to actually read the Bible themselves. He wanted to correct all those things. He wasn't trying to create Protestantism. And we know how Protestantism, because people say you got to be some murderers instead of sprinkle. We get Methodists and Baptists and so on and so forth, and then another 40,000 other variations of Christianity. But the ones that will become Catholics are the ones who led Christianity from the beginning of it being taken out of the hands of the Hebrew people by the creation of Jesus through the writings of Josephus ben Matthias, and then then backed up by the writings of, what's my man out of Egypt? I forgot something of Alexander. He was a Hellenistic Jew in Alexandria, Egypt, and then he started writing, and then Herod started writing, and then you start getting others like Irenaeus and all these other people who start writing. And as all of them start writing, then centuries later, you start getting your canon. About 500 years later, you start getting your canon. But what is now known as the Catholic Church was the original creators of Christianity. Whereas Antioch is Turkey. Whereas Rome is in Italy. Religion is nothing but early mind control. I agree 100%. That's all it is. All right. Is Paul the true father of the Catholic Church? I would agree with you on that one, that Paul is the true father of Christianity, not the Catholic Church, Christianity. But it will become the Catholic Church. And the Catholics truly still control the Protestants by them, although they are the ones who control the doctrine of your Bible, the writing, the translations of your Bible. Because many people think they're reading the authorized version of King James, but you're not. What you're actually reading is when they couldn't kill James and his scribes in the gunpowder assassination, the failed gunpowder assassination, the Jesuits, who were created to thwart James, then wrote their own King James version. And every other translation in English and most other languages have come from the King James version. They've come from the King James version, not the authorized King James version. So therefore, since it's controlled by the Jesuits, it is controlled by the Catholics. So all your translations are from the Catholic doctrine or from the Catholic writings. But Paul is the writer of the majority of your New Testament. Paul is the one who went out to the Gentile. There are other books that didn't make it in there and even in Acts, it demonstrates that there was an issue between Peter and Paul, right? So Paul is the true leader of it. And that's normal, to be honest, that's normal. If you look at any movement, usually the originator of the movement is not the one that builds the movement, right? It is those first and second lieutenants that's within your movement to build it. Like if you want to start a movement, like if I wanted to start a movement, right, or start a religion, I would never start a religion. But if I wanted to start a movement, a different way of thinking, it is not me who would actually greatly spread the message, greatly entice people to listen and come in. It is those first group of lieutenants and that second and third level groups of lieutenants who actually build the movement, who actually get out there and do the work. If we prop up people like Martin Luther King, right, for the SCLCU, but the growth of the SCLCU didn't come because of Dr. King. He was the figurehead. It is all the local communities of SCLU members or leaderships in the local community that actually built the organization. So with Jesus being the figurehead, he didn't build the organization. It was Paul and the writings of Paul that built it. It was Paul being in Rome, Paul being in Antioch and being in Corinth and all these places that actually built Christianity and spread it more so than anybody else. So it was his writings that did. Now, think about it. Nobody knows who actually wrote Paul. We don't know if there's a real Paul or not. Josephus' writings are mainly Jesus stuff. As far as the Paulinian Christianity, they don't know who wrote it. There's no Apostle Matthew and all these kind of people. Those are just Greekified names that they gave to these people. But we actually have no idea who wrote these things. But we know that Rome as a government, Rome as an institution, created the movement, created Christianity, made it grow, made it become what it is. Without Rome, Constantine could not have promoted Mithraism as a religion of Rome, because Mithraism was for like upper middle class. The worship of Apollo was for the elites. Christianity was for the masses. So that's why it was promoted. It was organized. That's one of the reasons why it was organized. It was also causing fights and battles amongst people throughout the Roman Empire, and he had to shut that down, just like Vespasian came and shut down the Jewish revolts. And then because it was something for the regular people, Theodosius made it for all of Rome. Where do these European names come from? It says that it was divided in Africa and the Hebrew tribes, and they were all black Africans. Because Rome took over Christianity. Rome created it. So, if you create a religion, if you're controlling a religion, you're going to make it look more like you. You ain't going to make it look like somebody else. And not that the Roman people were oppressing Africans at the time. The Roman people oppressed everybody. Matter of fact, Julius Caesar said that British people, they were only good for slaves and labor. That's it. That they had no other value beyond that. And these were people who looked white. These were white people. So it wasn't about race. Race is something that was created in the 1600s. Rome oppressed everybody they touched, right? Unless they made you Roman and you became Roman and become a Roman citizen, right? Now, they didn't treat like you if you didn't have Roman lineage. Now, your lineage needed to go into the Roman royalties and things of that nature, the Roman good families and all that. And that was for the elite class. But as a populace, they didn't oppress. They weren't like racially oppressing people. But since the Europeans, and you move more into the 400s, 300, 400, 500s CE, you'll have more Romanized names. And since, like I said earlier, the Romans, although they respected the Greeks but hated the Greeks, to attach Greek names to these writings gave it a sense of authenticity, because it gives it a sense of being ancient. And the more ancient something was, the more respected it was by Romans. So therefore, you're going to get these Greekified names, these Hellenistic names in the New Testament. But My kids are going to be here in 2 hours, and knowing them, they will be early. And dinner has to be cooked, and this cigar smell has to get out of my house. So I got to run this loud machine to get this out the house, even though later on we will all go out and start building a fire and smoke cigars together. But I appreciate you guys. I don't know if it'll be Monday or Tuesday of next week when we're going to cover Genesis 33. We might do 33 and 34 because those two got some, I think they're very much connected. Should have did 32 and 33. I should have did 32 and 33 together. Now that I think about it. And then 34 and 35. But we'll just probably do 33. And then the next week we'll do 34 and 35 the week after that. So I appreciate you guys. Errol on YouTube, I appreciate the donation to the channel. Everybody who's watching this on Facebook and you're watching this on TikTok, think about TikTok. Once this is over, no one else on TikTok will ever see it again. So if I ever do a live and I don't have all these cameras, it'll be on YouTube. Every live will always be on YouTube. So go to my YouTube channel, Larenzo Reid, spelled LarenzoReid. Go there, subscribe, and soon I will start doing certain videos that will only be on YouTube. That's it. And you guys know on Facebook and TikTok that there are videos that I might do. It's a 30-minute video, but only 10 minutes of it is loaded onto Facebook and YouTube. I'm Facebook and TikTok, but the entirety of the video is on YouTube. So YouTube is where the majority of my stuff will always end up there. Right? So I appreciate you guys. Remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself. Wait a minute, before I say that, always remember, I am not here trying to change anybody's religion. If being Christian makes you a moral person, stay Christian. If being Muslim makes you a moral person, stay Muslim. If you feel more connected to the creative mind of the universe, then stay in that religion. Do not change. Stay there. My channel is mainly for my children and for those people who are of like mind, who have walked away from religion and are looking for a deeper understanding so that they can feel more confident in their walking away, so that they can understand why they have walked away and find a different connection to the creator, or if they choose to be atheists, which many people misunderstand atheism. Atheists just say there may be a God, but there's just not sufficient evidence to prove that there one exists. But if there's ever sufficient evidence, they'll be okay and accept it. So understand, not here to diminish anybody. And if these are not videos, if these videos cause you any kind of issues, then they're not for you. So with that, y'all have a great day. Have a great week. Remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journeys, good vibrations.